the radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Friday, May 2nd. We will be covering the news. I hope everybody's having a had a great week. Looking forward to a great weekend. We will be back on the Yaron Brook Show tomorrow, Saturday, and probably Sunday as well. Probably do a show on Saturday and on Sunday. Topics to be determined. I will let you guys know. All right, let's jump in. Unemployment numbers came out today. Number of jobs created exceeded expectations, so it was higher than what was expected by several tens of thousands of jobs. So this was good news. The market went up quite a bit today as a consequence of that. Stocks did well, and generally, I think people are. I guess the market is hopeful that maybe the negative GDP number that came out the other day is now real. Of course, the numbers, the employment numbers are really pre the impact of tariffs, pre-impact of Liberation Day. Everything is pre-impact of Liberation Day. So I'm not sure there's too much to celebrate. But, the U.S. economy, as always, is resilient and, seems to be able to withstand even the dumbest or the most harmful of economic policies. So, so we do have employment numbers were better than expected. Markets are up. Hopefully, your 401k reflects that. And generally, the S&P 500 has been up for days now, and we're seeing equity markets recover. I think partially also because the market, at least interpret Trump as saying that he is going to reduce tariffs on China and he's going to compromise and he's going to be nice to the Chinese and all of that. We still haven't seen anything specific, anything in action, but at least the market is pricing tariffs not to have too big of an impact on the U.S. and for the Trump administration to actually significantly moderate its views on tariffs in the days and weeks to come. And again, the employment number, which is really much more important in a sense than GDP, because it reflects the number of jobs available to people, and that is the basis on which a standard of living, quality of life is based. That is a good sign that it hasn't, it was better than expected. It's still positive growth. I don't know if that'll last. We will see. I still think there's the potential for thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of small to medium-sized businesses to shut down here because of tariffs. But, we'll see. Maybe Trump will reverse the worst of the tariffs in the next few days, and will avoid the worst impact of the tariffs on the American economy. Certainly, the market seems to believe that. And markets, it's hard to argue with markets. People are putting their money where their mouth is. So we'll keep monitoring and keep seeing how things evolve and how things develop. By the way, yesterday we did an interview with Phil Magnus and really good on tariffs and trade, and you guys should watch it. He knows a lot about the history, and we talked a lot about the history. And since there's a lot of false information out there about the history of tariffs and trade in U.S. history, I think you should watch the interview from yesterday to give you a good introduction to the history of U.S. economy at least from this perspective. So that was the unemployment number. There was one other story I wanted to cover before we got rolling with the stuff I had listed, but all right, we're just going to jump in. Bukele is a really interesting story in the New York Times a couple of days ago. about Bukele and about all these prisoners that the U.S. has deported to the El Salvadorian jail. The Times is reporting about negotiations that Bukele had with the United States. Now, remember who Bukele is. Bukele is the president of El Salvador. He came to power and really had a pretty unremarkable first couple of years until he decided to basically do everything he could to clamp down on violence. Initially, when he came into power, he negotiated deals with the gangs to reduce violence in El Salvador. When he realized that was not working, he basically endorsed a plan that went out there, sent out the military and the police, and arrested anybody who had drug-related tattoos. Tens of thousands of people were arrested. He also built massive prisons. Everybody was arrested, and then they had these mass trials to try to figure out who was and who wasn't. But in the meantime, everybody was incarcerated. There was no innocent until proven guilty, anything like that. He literally arrested huge numbers of El Salvadorian citizens and put them in jail. And then kind of try to sort it out after the fact. And again, proof of membership in a gang was tattoos. Is that familiar to anybody? Familiar? Yeah. This is the policy that Donald Trump is mimicking. In order to do this, he declared a state of emergency, put the troops out into the streets, and incarcerated, again, tens of thousands of people, many of them innocent. And, for what it seems like is going to be very long periods of time. The consequence of this is predictable. If you take the male population of any country and you incarcerate a significant proportion of them, you will see a decline in violent crime. Violent crime is a male phenomenon. Women do not, generally commit violent crimes. Violent crimes are primarily male, committed by men. I don't know what the percentage is, but it's large. So if you lock men up, violent crime goes down. Indeed, in El Salvador, it went from the highest murder rate in the world to like a pretty bad U.S. city, but just a U.S. city. So not that bad. As a consequence, Bukele became unbelievably popular. He then, in spite of the Constitution limiting his term of president in El Salvador to only one term, he then ran for a second term. Does that sound familiar? I've seen Trump is selling these Trump 2028 hats already. So, Trump is learning from Bukele. Anyway, he ran and he won in a landslide because he had made El Salvador much safer. He is also, out there blaming higher prices on grocery departments. He is an authoritarian when it comes to the economy. He is a central planner. He is a real authoritarian in El Salvador. The people so far love him because of the reduction in crime rates, but he's also far, far, far from being a capitalist. For a while, people raved about him because he embraced Bitcoin and made it legal tender in the country. But the reality is that the El Salvadorian economy is not doing well, has not done well even under his rule. And therefore, they needed a large loan for El Salvador, a large loan, in order to keep the country going. And in order to do that, the IMF required that he basically rescind legal tender status from Bitcoin, which he did a couple of months ago. Anyway, Bukele is a statist authoritarian who cares nothing for individuals or individual rights, but who has been able to achieve certain level of a reduction or significant level of reduction in crime in El Salvador. And he gets a lot of credit for that. Anyway, he has built these massive jails. They have some spare space. So the Trump administration went down to negotiate with Bukele in order to send deportees from the United States to El Salvador. What was interesting is that Bukele, when the Trump advisors approached him, was worried. You know, he really wanted to make sure that the people being sent down were actually criminals. That they were actually convicted. They were actually gang members. Surprisingly, he did not want to take Americans or American illegal immigrants, whose only crime was being in the United States illegally. He said, "I'll jail convicted criminals, but not just illegals." And part of that was a worry of how it would look at home. A lot of Salvadorians have relatives who are illegal immigrants in the United States, and they don't want to see their relatives, and they don't view going to America illegally as a crime justifying being in an El Salvadorian horrific high security jail. I guess only Americans think that being an illegal in America justifies such treatment. El Salvadorians don't. So he couldn't really convince his own people that it was in their self-interest for the United States to be dumping U.S. deportees in his jails. So he told the Americans that he really if he was willing to do it, but only if they showed him proof that these people were actually gang members and convicted a criminal. He wanted evidence. Of course, once they started deporting people into the jails, the U.S. officials had problems gathering the evidence. For one, most of the people who were sent to El Salvador jail were not convicted criminals. So they came up with a scorecard that the Homeland Security Department created, which assigned kind of points for different attributes. So you if you have a lot of tattoos, you got 4 points. If you had other, what do you call it, attributes that linked you somehow to gang membership, you got other points. If you scored more than 8 points, tattoos plus something else, like somebody said or somebody reported you as, then you were considered a gang member. That, and then they promised him an invitation to the White House to have a visit with Trump. And those two things seem to have convinced Bukele to take on the deportees and to accept them in spite of the fact that they are not convicted criminals. He was willing, because the U.S. labeled them violent criminals, and this way he could stay, close to Trump. So even though at the meeting with Trump in front of the reporters, Bukele took a very tough stance. He's not returning anybody. He's happy to take the deportees. These are violent criminals and so on and so forth. He himself had some real doubts about all of this. Now imagine a world in which a dictator of a small Central American country who has extra jail space has doubts about the people that the United States is imprisoning in his jails. But the United States, the American administration, responsible for protection of the rights of people who reside in America, has no problem with it. So, yep. It's impractical to give 21 million people a trial, so what? Let's just shoot them. What the hell? Let's just shoot them. They're not human beings, because we can't give them a trial. They're just overwhelming us with numbers. So we're going to send them to an El Salvadorian jail instead. Shooting them is a little brutal. El Salvadorian jails, that's a much better environment for them. That's okay. It's just unbelievable the disregard so many Americans now have for the lives of individual people, for the lives of people who want to live in America, who risk their lives and much of their fortune to come and live in America. So what the hell? They're here illegally. Oh my God. This is one of the biggest criminal activities one can engage in, entering the United States without a visa. And therefore, we can't shoot them. We'd like to shoot them, can't shoot them. So we'll send them to a brutal and Salvadorian jail. It really is pretty pathetic that this is the state of America. I can understand, okay, they broke the law, just like everybody else breaks the law. You put them in front of a judge and you try them, and the penalties are not that big. You deport them, you don't put them in a jail. But we now, because of what's happened over the last 10 years, because over the last 10 years, led by Trump, intellectuals on the right have basically dehumanized illegal immigrants. They're now not fully human. They certainly have no individual rights. They have no rights. Now it's okay to just round them up, and send them to jails or deport them to countries where they're going to be treated horrifically or put back in jail. Send them back to a place like Venezuela, which is a socialist hellhole. What the hell? They're not human. That's what kind of the Trump and the right's new rhetoric basically suggest to all of us. So really horrific. It's just disgusting. The way we are treating human beings, and so un-American, so un-American, so the opposite of what you would expect Americans to be. So they've lost their status as individuals because they're illegal. We treat criminals in America better than we do them because criminals in America get a trial. Immigration is the topic that, it's so upsetting because we're talking about human beings. And we're talking about human beings. So if you're a U.S. citizen, you have rights. And if you're not a U.S. citizen, you don't have rights. If you ever read the Declaration of Independence, we'll get to Donald Trump's interpretation of the Declaration of Independence in a minute. But if you've ever read the Declaration of Independence, it says all men are created equal. All men. It doesn't say citizens. It says they're all endowed with inalienable rights. The right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Nowhere there does it say citizen. Nowhere there does it say American. Nowhere there does it say any of that. It says all men are created equal. All of them. But to expect anybody to take the Declaration of Independence seriously, it is just bizarre. They're inside the United States. As soon as you step into the United States, the job of the U.S. government, the only frigging job of the U.S. government is to protect your rights. Whether you're legal, illegal, or otherwise. Now, you can be then accused of violating laws and, brought in front of a court or whatever, but you don't lose your right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness because you crossed the border. You don't lose your right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness because you're illegal. You're a human being. And if you'd actually look at some of these human beings, if you'd actually look at why they come to the United States, what they went through in order to get to the United States, you would be, if you were a human being, you would be ashamed of your attitude around illegal immigrants because, what would you do if you were born in an El Salvadorian hellhole? Would you not try to get into the United States? And given that it's impossible for you to get in legally, would you not get in illegally? And what would your moral status be if you didn't try? It's almost like I could say, it's almost like it would be immoral not to try to get into the United States illegally, because then you're not pursuing your life. But you who are the beneficiaries, some of you who are the beneficiaries of living in the United States by accident or birth, you can sit here and, oh, they're illegal. They should be sent to a jail in El Salvador. All right. The chat has gone crazy. God, what's going on? All right. Quickly, in Ukraine, Russia. So, we talked yesterday about the mineral deal that was signed a couple of days ago. And today we got the announcement that the U.S. is formally pulling out of attempting to coordinate a peace deal between Ukraine and Russia. So no more Witkoff running around the world speaking to Putin and others and to try to get people, try to put pressure on Zelensky and so on. So the U.S. State Department announced that it will be withdrawing from and will no longer mediate peace between Ukraine and Russia after Russian President Vladimir Putin refused to sign a peace settlement ending his full-scale illegal invasion of Ukraine. I don't know if they said illegal invasion of Ukraine. It's now up to, according to State Department, up to the two parties to present concrete ideas about how the conflict is going to end. And they should meet directly to end the war. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens at this point. And it's going to be interesting to see if Trump changes his attitude towards Putin or towards Zelensky, or whether the attitude changes. But this should go under the big heading. We should have a document ready. And the title of the heading should be Trump Fails. And we should start listing all the Trump failures in this document. And certainly this was one that he promised. I mean, he didn't just promise once. He repeated this many, many times during the campaign and a little bit during, actually, after he won the presidency, that he would solve the Ukrainian-Russian war within 24 hours. 24 hours. Now, maybe he exaggerated 24 days, 24 days. Now he's given up on 24 months. So just listed as a Trump failure among the many that have already happened. I'd say most of his presidency so far has been a failure. And the failures to come. But, as I've said in the past, yeah, this is a massive Trump failure. I've said, I guess, that, Trump is the worst president in American history, or will go down as the worst president in American history. So I'm reading a little bit about American history, and I'm going through kind of the period of Woodrow Wilson. And I got to tell you, Woodrow Wilson was probably, in terms of violating the Constitution, violating individual rights, probably worse than Trump. He was worse than Trump in particular, given how much freedom still existed back then, right? In that period of American history. So 1913 to 1917. So I mean, the amount of violations that Woodrow Wilson engaged in his 4 years as president. I mean, freedom of speech was really gone. Massive interventions in the economy, which were unprecedented. Before that, just violations of Constitution left and right, partially in the name of entering. Of course, he entered World War I, which was an unmitigated disaster. Under Wilson, we got a Fed, we got the income tax, and we got raising of the income tax dramatically. Initially, I don't know if you know this, but initially the income tax was very low, I think 8%, and only on the very, very, very wealthy. So most overwhelming majority of Americans didn't pay income tax. And that's how it was sold to the American people. You won't ever pay it. It's just the wealthy will pay it. And then the rates went way up and everybody started paying it. So within the Wilson administration. So Wilson was worse. And was much more of an ideologue. That's the other difference. Wilson was an ideologue. He was the first fully committed progressive. And the one who really shifted progressivism to become a democratic thing, where it had been, progressivism was really Republican. It was Teddy Roosevelt who was a progressive president again. But Teddy didn't get much done. Woodrow Wilson got a lot done. You read the history; it's actually quite shocking and surprising that America did as well as it did during that entire period. All right. Just to remind you that the Democrats are still crazy. I found this story. It's kind of bouncing around. This is insane, but this is right at the heart of the Democratic Party. Are we not streaming? Are you not seeing this? You guys can see the video and audio, right? Everything's good? Yep, still streaming. All right, so Democratic Party is trying to figure out what it stands for. And while I'm sure there's some moderate Democrats who are going to come to the forefront and try to capture the party ultimately, so far the party is pretty dominated by the kind of nutty left. The nutty left is more motivated, it's more passionate, it's more organized. Moderates don't organize. What do you organize under a banner of? Oh, we're all organized. We're all moderates. Let's get passionate about being a moderate. Let's get passionate about not being as woke as those people are. You don't get that. The woke people really are passionate. You're seeing AOC rallying large groups around with Bernie Sanders, and she is going to run, I think, for president. I don't know. I didn't know she was old enough to run, but people are talking about her running in 2028. I thought she had to be older than that. But anyway, so she's going to run, maybe. I don't think she can win. I don't think the Democratic Party or the American people want AOC as president. But even in the actual Democratic Party, organization, you're seeing the crazy left, dominate the process. And you can see that in the election of the leadership elections to the DNC. So the vice chair is a guy named David Hogg, who's pretty far left, and known as a gun control advocate, but pretty far left on a lot of different issues. And he became vice chair of the Democratic Party. Anyway, he beat a woman called Kaylin Free, a Native American attorney, and a Native American attorney, and he beat her. Now she is challenging her defeat. She's claiming the vote undermined minority candidates. I'm quoting, by failing to distinguish between gender categories in a meaningful way, the DNC process violated its own charter and bylaws, undermining both fairness and gender diversity. This is the complaint that she wrote. She's I guess that the voting should have provided a different weighting for people who are different, I don't know, diverse or whatever. I don't know exactly how she thinks this works. Maybe democracy really means that if you're in the intersectionality hierarchy, if you're part of the exploited group, you get 2 votes or 3 votes or 5 votes. Maybe you get votes based on your intersectionality score. So anyway, this is crazy stuff. And this is evidence kind of that the woke, crazy left has not gone away. They're still dominant. They're quiet because they were a little afraid of Trump. There's no question. They were a little afraid of Trump. And, whoops, what's going on here? All right. And, even the people who are getting elected to senior positions within the Democratic Party are pretty far left. And this is the challenge that the Democrats are going to have when they run even in 2026. Right now, Trump is very unpopular. And there is a lot of reason to believe that in 2026, the Democrats are going to just crush Republicans in the House elections, in the election for the House of Representatives, as midterm elections usually go against the party in power. And then if the president is particularly, unpopular, the midterm elections can really be pretty crushing. They were for Trump in 2018. The challenge here is that if the Democratic Party remains kind of the party of the nutcases, of the crazies, of the woke, then it's not going to be successful. They're not going to be able to capture the votes. People will continue to reject the woke craziness. We will see if even if slightly more rational Democratic Party is able to rise from the ashes of this latest election and win over the American people, because it's clear that America's rejected woke. It's clear that America rejected the far left when they elected Trump. I think they would reject Trump if they had an alternative. They'd reject MAGA if they had an alternative. But are they going to get an alternative? Is anybody going to provide an alternative? Not clear at all. Okay, everybody wants me to subscribe. All right, we are now, the House of Representatives, the Senate, are in the process of actually now working through an actual budget bill, actually figure out allocating money to departments and stuff. The Senate is doing the same thing. This is the great, big, beautiful, massive bill. The House is supposedly committed to cutting $4 trillion over the next 10 years. Now, the way government does accounting, what that means is cut from the rate of growth that exists now. That it's not a real cut. It's not an actual cut. It's grow less by 10 trillion than we would have if a Democrat was in power, or something like that. The Senate was only willing to commit to cutting like a few $1 billion. And now they have to figure out what they're actually going to cut, if anything. The Trump administration has submitted an outline for a budget to Congress, like Trump's priorities. A part of that involves cutting $163 billion from the 2026 federal budget, from that part of the budget that is not defense and discretionary. Remember, unless you reform Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, you can't cut them. They're not discretionary. They are, part of the thing. Now, some of what these cuts involve is a lot of actual good things that would be cut. So this is kind of right of Alex Epstein's advocacy. A lot of the cuts being proposed by the administration, again, they have to get to Congress, and Congress actually has to vote on them, are dramatic cuts to alternative energy subsidies, all kinds of alternative energy things, all kinds of Interior Department programs that involve, again, setting aside funds and everything else for alternatives. They're cutting EPA stuff, and so a lot of this is coming from energy and environmentalism, those areas where the Trump administration has been pretty good about really cutting back on regulations and cutting back on government spending. The problem, of course, is all it is $160 billion. $160 billion is very minor cuts. Now, it's better than nothing, and it are the kind of cuts that will liberate certain parts of the economy, particularly, again, energy, and maybe some infrastructure projects, given that it dramatically is going to weaken the the environmentalist movement and the environmental regulations. But that, of course, is just what the White House has sent to Congress. But now Congress, governed by Republicans in both the House and the Senate, and here, for the budget, they only need a simple majority. Now they're going to have to work all the details out. So we have a bunch of committees. We have all the committees and subcommittees, and now we're going to have to work through different pieces of the budget and put it all together. Now all the special interest groups are going to come to Washington and lobby congressmen. And remember, all you have to do is peel off a few Republicans. Republicans, particularly in the House and Senate, they basically have to get unanimity. If they get people objecting to the bills will die. By the way, none of these cuts are DOGE cuts. These are cuts that are being proposed to the White House, the budget office in the White House, to Congress, and our Congress has to approve them. The White House can't cut spending unilaterally. This is the fallacy about DOGE. You actually have to change it in the budget, and the budget is determined not by DOGE. The budget is determined by Congress. So what DOGE did is fire a bunch of people, but the money is still allocated to those departments. Only Congress can end the budgetary allocation. So indeed, in spite of all the DOGE cuts that have happened, government spending has increased every single month since Trump got into office, and is expected to increase every single month for the rest of the fiscal year. So we're going to have now all these committees, all the lobbyists get together and start meticulously going line by line over all the budget items for the American federal government, this massive, many trillion-dollar budget. You can't cut Medicare, and you can't cut Social Security. So what are they going after? Well, in the House, they've said they're going to go after Medicaid. Medicaid is health care for poor people. 95 million Americans are on Medicaid. So they're talking about shrinking the amount of money dedicated to Medicaid. But a lot of Republicans are from districts that are dominated by Medicaid recipients. Medicaid recipients. They're not going to want to shrink it. They're not going to want to dramatically cut it or make a lot of people ineligible. So now they're saying, we're going to spend less on Medicaid, but we're not going to shrink eligibility. So we're still going to have all these tens of millions of Americans on it, but we're somehow going to provide it less money. How are they going to do this? How are they going to shrink Medicaid by hundreds of billions of dollars without gutting the program? They probably can't. So this is the big battle now. The big battle right now is because you can't touch Medicare, you can't touch Medicare, and you can't touch Social Security. They are now trying to figure out how do they shrink Medicaid, which is a huge program. Again, somewhere between 70 to 95 million Americans are on this program. But they are going to try to do it. Now, of course, they'll say they're going to cut waste, fraud, and abuse. Waste, fraud, and abuse are not going to get them the kind of numbers that they want. So this is a budget process that we're going to watch and going to see how it all gets resolved. Well, one way to resolve this that Republicans are supporting is to adopt a program advocated for by Democrats, right? And what do Democrats propose in terms of cutting the cost of spending on healthcare? Well, Democrats have long argued for price controls on drugs, on pharmaceuticals. And indeed, Biden imposed some price controls through executive order on, and I think there was a bill that passed Congress, on the pharmaceutical companies. By the way, a law that Trump has not rescinded, has not argued against, has not tried to undo. Indeed, quite the opposite. Republicans are now talking about placing price controls on drugs as drug prices on pharmaceutical companies as a means of cutting government spending. So the government is now, the Republican government is now, Republicans are now adopting Democratic talking points in order to get spending out of control, which is pretty amazing. Another talking point is several people within the White House over the last couple of weeks have been started to talk about one of Joe Biden's talking points, Joe Biden and Elizabeth Warren, and that is to put together a special millionaire tax. This is now what's being called the Bernie Sanders wing of the GOP. The Bernie Sanders wing of the GOP wants price controls on drugs and a millionaire's tax. This is what Republican politics is under Trump. It's almost as leftist as under any Democrat, and in some ways more leftist than any Democrat. And why exactly did you vote for Trump? What do you get from him that, DI? He's not woke, and he hates the left, even though he is the left. He hates the left, and therefore he's a good guy. Pretty sad. There's a good article by Kim Strassel in the Wall Street Journal titled "Republicans for Price Controls Rather Than Reform Welfare. Some in the GOP Want to Fight Pharma Companies." So Kim Strassel can often be very, very good. Let's see. One good news thing is that Trump signed an executive order related to spending. Executive order basically pulling funding from NPR and PBS. Now, which I am 100% for. The government should not be funding media, any kind of media, no matter what the actual views are or the actual advocacy is. The problem with the executive order is that that's probably unconstitutional. Now, again, allocation of budgetary money is not the job of the president. It's Congress. Congress, if you're going to defund NPR and PBS, Congress has to defund NPR and PBS. And you'd think that with Republican majorities in the House and the Senate, they would do that. Republicans have tried in the past and always failed to actually get it across. So to the extent that Trump is going to try to implement this cutting of funding to NPR and PBS, I think he's going to be sued. I think it'll go in front of the courts. And I don't think he has the grounds to do it. I think this will be something that goes that Congress is going to have to do. They're going to have to get the balls and actually defund it. Now, we will see when and if that happens. I'll be surprised if finally they do this, right? If finally they do this. All right, let's see. A quick one on housing. It's pretty funny that, people are rediscovering, well, I mean, it's better to rediscover than not, the laws of supply and demand. It's pretty stunning. So here's, people have been complaining for a couple of decades now about the cost of housing. Housing keeps going up in price, and not in every place in the country, but in some places in the country, particularly California, and a lot of the major cities are seeing prices go up and rents as a consequence, rents going up and home prices going up. And many of us in the free market world have been saying, well, of course, it's a supply issue. We're not building enough homes. If you build enough homes, supply, demand, prices will come down. And people are skeptical of this. No, and they've got a million other reasons why prices of homes are going up. No, it's a simple supply issue. It's not about monetary inflation. Usually it was in the 2000s, but since 2008, it's not been about monetary inflation. It's not being about anything but not enough supply. And there's a massive shortage of homes in the United States. You saw this, and of course, there's the supply is constrained because of zoning and regulations and all kinds of land use laws. Well, surprisingly, on the left, over the last few years, there's been a movement called Yes in My Backyard that has been mobilized to try to influence left-leaning cities, because most cities are left-leaning, to build more housing. And again, the skeptics are like, what'll that help? That won't do anything. And they say you have to build low-income housing. No, any housing will reduce the cost of all housing. Any housing will reduce the cost of all housing, particularly of cheaper housing. And people are still skeptical. So here's a couple of headlines. And it's crazy that this is just not accepted, and that every city in the United States just doesn't embrace this simple, straightforward policy. Build, 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 and prices will go down. So this is from Berkeley. This is from California. Many Berkeley rents are back to 2018 prices. Is new housing the reason? A question mark. A question mark. Like Econ 101 before you write a title like that. Rent prices for Berkeley's older housing stock have cooled significantly, even as inflation has soared. Yes, when you build housing, prices will come down because you've increased supply, demand hasn't gone up, and therefore prices go down. Rent is determined by supply and demand, not by greedy landlords, but by supply and demand. But they still, even though it's happening before their eyes, they still don't know it. Get rid of rent control and increasing the quantity of housing, and rent prices will come down. Here's another one, another headline. Apartment surge in Denver market delivers record decline in rents. Region added 20,000 multifamily units last year, resulting in a 3.6% rent decline in Q4. Well, at least the guy who wrote the article in Denver knows about supply and demand and can make the causal relationship, not just the correlation, between the increase in rent, increase in quantity of houses and the decline in rents. So, you know, we can complain about housing. The solution is right there, unequivocal, easy to identify. Build more homes. And to do that, you have to change the zoning laws and change the building restriction laws and all of that crap. All right, I want to show you a video. Talk about education. I want to show you a video, which I think is pretty creepy. We'll see what you think. This is a video of Miller, Stephen Miller, Trump's advisor, senior advisor, talking about, in a sense, his kind of vision for education. And I'm just going to play it. I hope you find this as creepy and as shocking and as worrisome as I do. Here we go.
Be taught to love America. Children will be taught to be patriots. Children will be taught civic values. Children will be taught
to be patriots. They'll be taught to love this country. And if they don't, we'll whip them. No, he didn't say that. I mean, just the way he says it, that is unbelievably creepy. And he looks like a little, he looks the part. He looks like a little fascist. Children will be taught what I tell them to be taught. Note that this is after they closed the education department. They have no interest in letting go of education. They have no interest in getting the federal government out of education. Their goal is to replace leftist agenda in education with their right-wing agenda in education. Let me play this again and some more of it.
Taught to love America. Children will be taught to be patriots. Children will be taught civic values for schools that want federal taxpayer funding.
So if you get federal taxpayer funding, which I thought when they shut down the Department of Education, they wouldn't get anymore, but I guess they are going to get, but only if you now advocate for the ideas that the federal government decides are appropriate. Just like the left did it, the right will do the same.
So as we close the Department of Education and we provide funding to states, we are going to make sure that these funds are not being used to promote communist ideology.
In other words, we're going to make sure that these funds are used to promote our fascist, nationalist ideology.
For any nation to be successful, it cannot teach its children to hate themselves and to hate their country. So these are a few of the areas in which President Trump has fought the cancerous, communist, woke culture that was destroying this country, where we were led to believe that men were women, that women were men, that racial discrimination was good, that merit was bad, and that safety and physical security mattered less than the feelings of liberal ideology. Be taught to love America. Children will be taught.
I find this stunning and scary. And children will be taught to love America. Children will be taught. It's almost like a mantra. But this is, again, federal. This is why the federal government should have no involvement in education. It shouldn't give money to the states. It should just not give money at all. It should just shut itself down. This is why closing the Department of Education was not a big of a win, as some of us might have thought it was, because as long as the federal government is still involved in education, when Stephen Miller is involved, they will be learned to love America. When AOC is in government, they will be taught to be good comrades in the communist party, whatever, right? The point is that education needs to be separate from politics. How about teaching education to think? How about teaching children to think for themselves? How about teaching children the facts of history? If the facts of history don't align with loving your country, then maybe you shouldn't love your country. How about just teaching children math and English, writing skills and reading skills, and history, and just reality. This is like right out of, I don't know, the authoritarian playbook of state mandate, worship of the state. You shall love America. This is, you know, the whole point of this is to get students to be obedient, to be servants of the state, to be, quote, patriotic. And you don't have to teach reality, just like the left doesn't teach reality. What you teach is that which will make them subservient to the state. So the fact that we closed the Department of Education, it's going to have very little impact on the perversion that is state involvement in education. Just to give you an example of this, in Oklahoma, students are going to be required to learn about how the election was stolen from Trump in 2020. So here's one of the assignments they're going to have to do in social studies. Identify discrepancies in 2020 election results by looking at graphs and other information, including the sudden halting of ballot counting in select cities in key battleground states, the security risk of mail-in ballots, sudden batch dumps, an unforeseen record number of voters, and the unprecedented contraction of bellwether county trends. So Oklahoma is, in the social sciences curriculum, going to require the brainwashing of its students, or the indoctrination of its students, that's a better word, the indoctrination of its students in the idea that Trump lost the 2020 election. This is so essential to the identity of Republicans now. It's so essential to the identity of MAGA. It's so essential to the identity of Donald Trump that it is now going to enter the school curriculum, even though all of this is BS. It is completely debunked, being debunked many, many times. Lawsuits have been lost on this basis. Imagine what would happen. Imagine what would happen if students research this and they write a paper saying, actually, all this stuff has been debunked. Nothing happened. I mean, do you think they're going to get a good grade? Speechless. Talk about speechless. All right. So this is under the category of, no, I can't. I don't. Anyway, it's not under any category other than this is your president. This is under the category of this is your president. And it's going to be, in the president's words. So I'm not going to put any words in his mouth. And then you decide about what you think of this president. I will explain why I think this is so awful. But this is the president. So the president did an interview with Time Magazine, an extensive interview with Time Magazine. You should watch this. You should read this. I'm going to give you 2 examples from these interviews. The interview makes clear that we've elected a man who is ignorant and who is not smart to the White House. Now, I think a lot of us knew this already, but this interview is just so stark that it is really shocking. And this is why everybody should read the interview, because watch the interview or read it if you can find a transcript, because it is so. Luckily, the American people are smarter than this guy, or not more knowledgeable than this guy. It's just unbelievable. Here's an example. So the interviewer says, so 145 tariffs on China. And that is basically an embargo, which is true. Trump says, that's good. They deserve it. Interviewer says, it'll raise prices on everything from electronics to clothing to building houses. Trump says, you don't know that. You don't know whether or not China is going to eat it. Now, notice a minute ago, he admitted that it was basically an embargo. If it's an embargo, China's not eating it. The goods are just not arriving in America. So China can't eat it if the goods are not arriving in America. So that's the first contradiction. And then the interviewer says, that's mathematics. And Trump says, China probably will eat those tariffs. Now, we've done the math before, but I want to emphasize the math on this because I want to show you the sheer impossibility of what Trump is saying. Let's say you have a good that China is selling for $100 in the United States, $100. And let's say the profit margin on that, let's say the Chinese are really, this is good, they've cornered the market on, they've got a good, healthy profit margin. Let's say the profit margin is 30%, which is a very high profit margin on almost anything you buy from China. So it costs them $70 to make, and they're making $30, and they're selling it for $100 in the United States. Now, let's say the tariff is 145%, which is the example we've done here. 145% makes it so that if the tariff was borne by an American, then the price of the tariff, so that the tax paid by the importing company is now 145% of 100, which means $145. So when I import this good, I have to pay the Chinese company $100, and then I have to pay the U.S. government $145. Now, what would it mean for the Chinese company to eat the tariff? It would mean that not only would they have to be willing to give the product to the importer for nothing, basically, right? So it's 145% tariff. So they would have to be willing to reduce the price of the good so low that 144 tariff brought it up to 100. So they would have to sell it for less than $40. About $40. So at $40, 145% tariff is about $60, and that gets it back to $100. So they would have to, that means they eat it all up, right? At $40, what is their profit margin? They're losing $30 on every item they sell. How are the Chinese going to eat losing $30 for every item they sell because they're selling it at $40? It's just a mathematical impossibility. They would lose so much, they'd be wiped out very quickly. This is just one item, and I'm assuming 30% profit margin, which is just not true. Most Chinese goods have profit margins well below 10%. You just can't do it. And again, this is not difficult mathematics. This is not calculus. This is arithmetic. And we have a president of the United States who can't do the arithmetic and whose advisors are too afraid to tell him what the arithmetic actually means because they're smart enough. So that's one example of this interview, of what he said in the interview. The other one was, he's got a copy of the Declaration of Independence hanging in his office. And the interviewer asks him about the Declaration of Independence, about what it is and what it represents, right? And I mean, you got to watch the video of this because you've got to see the interviewer's facial response to to what Trump says. This is Donald Trump. I mean, this is him, right? I'm not making this up. I'm being objective. I could not highlight this, but this is the President of the United States, and this is a major interview he did with Time Magazine, and it's all over the web. Right, here it is. So he's asked about what it means, what this is. And so this is what he says, quote, "Well, it means exactly what it says. It's a declaration of unity and love and respect. And it means a lot. And it's something very special to our country." The Declaration of Independence, the most important political document in all of human history. The Declaration of Independence, the clearest articulation of the declaration of the rights of man, that man has rights. It's a declaration of unity. What unity? Around what? Of love? Love? Is love mentioned in the Declaration of Independence? I don't remember the word love in the Declaration of Independence. I'm sure, I don't remember unity, but certainly no love and respect. Respect from whom? It's a Declaration of Independence. It's a massive, disrespectful document, disrespecting the authoritarian king in America. You gotta watch, and then you watch it, and the interviewer's like looking at him like, "Are you crazy? Are you insane? Are you the President of the United States and you don't know what this document is about? Who are you?" Well, it means exactly what it says. It's a declaration of unity and love and respect, and it means a lot, and it's something very special to our country. The President of the United States, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's important for all of us to have an objective understanding of who we are actually dealing with. And that's who we're dealing with. All right. Thank you. That is the news for Friday, May 2nd. Let's jump into our questions, our super chat questions. We are way behind. I don't know what's gotten into you guys. You think a new month has started and you can... anyway, we're short of targets, so I'd appreciate, it would be great if some of you jumped in with some stickers and questions. We've got some time for questions. We've got some stickers. Mary Elaine, Robert, Bonnie, Alan, anonymous user, Jeremy, Stephen, and I saw there was one, Fend Harper, and Benjamin. Thank you all for the stickers. Really, really appreciate it. So please consider doing more stickers. Got a lot of people watching. This is the way you support the show, which is only made possible through contributions from people like you, listeners like you. I want to remind you that a great way to support the show is through Patreon. You can become a monthly supporter. Not worry about it. Most of you are listening to the show and watching the show are not live. So you can, some of you can do it on YouTube. You can still applaud and support the show that way. But the rest of you, the best way to do it is just go to Patreon, sign up, make a monthly contribution, anything from $2 to $500 or $1,000. I think there's an option for $1,000 a month. And that's it. And then you don't have to think about it again. And we are trading. You are providing me with a value. I'm providing you with a value. Obviously, you're listening. That means it's a value to you. So please support the show so we can keep it going. Michael says, I don't think Reagan was successful because he brought the moral majority. He was popular because of his more liberty-oriented and optimistic policies. Rand may have viewed him differently if she lived long enough to see his entire term. He became popular because of that, but he won. He didn't win by a big margin the first time. He won because the country was rejecting Jimmy Carter, who was a very unpopular president, and because the evangelicals voted for him. He would not have won without the evangelical vote. An evangelical vote that had voted for Jimmy Carter the previous election. In 1976, Jimmy Carter won because he got the evangelicals. They all shifted to Reagan and came into the Republican Party and became part of the Republican Party with the 1980 election. Now, by the time you get to 1984, Reagan is unbelievably popular, and he wins in a landslide, a true landslide, not a pseudo landslide like Donald Trump's victory. And that is because the economy is doing really well, and he does change the vibe in America. He changed it to a more optimistic, positive orientation. So he benefits from a thriving economy. A lot of that is more caused by people like Paul Volcker and actually the deregulation under Jimmy Carter and the kind of the financial activity going on Wall Street, which is generating a restructuring of American business that leads to a thriving economy. So he's benefited from thriving economy. He's lower taxes. Inflation is coming down because of Volcker. Interest rates are coming down. And he rings an optimistic note that resonates with Americans, and he wins. So Ayn Rand didn't say that he won because he brought the Maher majority into the Republican Party. Ayn Rand said she would never vote for him, and that she thinks he was a failed president, if you think about the long term, because he brought the Maher majority into the Republican Party. And she was absolutely right. He did bring the Maher majority into the Republican Party, even if they weren't the only cause of his victory. And he did ruin the Republican Party forever. We're seeing the consequence of that with Donald Trump. It's because the evangelicals, the emotionalist religionists, are associated with the Republican Party that we have Trump's party. That is Trump's party. It is Ronald Reagan's party. It's what the Maher majority is morphed into. Andrew, Rand was asked what we could do so that our children are not ashamed of success. She said, in part, do not teach them to be humble. Do you think there's a cultural repression on pride that leads to blatant braggarts like Trump? Yes. I mean, it's the same. It's my point about how altruism leads to nihilism and pragmatism. Nobody wants to be an altruist, and there's a certain element in which we reject pride in the context of religion and in the context of altruism, and people rebel against that when they rebel against altruism and they rebel against the religion, but they don't adopt as an alternative rational egoism. They don't adopt as an alternative the proper virtue of pride. What they adopt in opposed to it, to stick it in people's faces, is a form of hedonism, a form of pragmatism, a form of psychologically, a form of narcissism, which embraces being a braggart, embraces, the Trump kind of behavior. And that is a direct consequence of this rejection and not having an alternative, but also not looking for an alternative. That is being oriented towards emotionalism, being oriented towards the narcissism. But I think a culture that is altruistic, but is still semi-free, the people who rebel against the altruism are going to land up. Many of them are going to land up as narcissists or pragmatists. Shazbad, I have a theory that Trump is actually Gilderoy Lockhart, the incompetent wizard who managed to convince everyone that he was a hero. I don't know who Gilderoy Lockhart was, but I find it hard to believe that Trump is a wizard, even an incompetent one. That seems way too attributing to him abilities that I don't think he has. Michael, is the right too unintellectual to embrace objectivism? I've interacted with a few MAGA rallies. These people are real knuckle draggers. Yeah, I think that's right. Or to put it another way, they have been so corrupted epistemologically by religion and by their cult behavior and by their worship of Trump that they are beyond hope. They are not who we should be looking for to find recruits. In that sense, I think the left has always been a better hunting ground, or old-style Republicans, the more intellectual conservatives, are better a place to find converts to objectivism. I do not think MAGA is a complete and utter waste of time. It is an anti-reason political movement, an anti-mind political movement. Liam, why is Trump fast with the tariffs and slow with deregulation? Can't he claim some emergency power to deregulate certain industries? I'm sure he can, but deregulation is boring. It's boring, uninteresting, and there are a lot of people, and I'm sure a lot of people surrounding him, that don't want him to regulate because regulations are power. And when you deregulate, you lose power. So there's a lot of people who want to use regulations. I mean, this is, again, J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance is inspired by people like Patrick Deneen who think that regulations are good. They just need to be used to inculcate right-wing ideas. It's the same as we don't need to dismantle the Department of Education because we want the Department of Education so we can inculcate students with our ideas. Now, they're dismantling the Department of Education and inculcating their ideas. So they found a way to do both. But that's why tariffs are easier. And look, another way to say it, Trump is passionate about tariffs. Tariffs are just not one other policy issue. This is the one thing that Trump has believed in and advocated for since the 1980s. This is something he actually believes in. Deregulation, he doesn't really believe in. It's just yeah, that would be nice. Not your average algorithm. Isn't it infuriating that in a few hundred years, the world will be perfect and none of us will be able to see it? You can't think that way. You can only think about what is in your life, what is possible for you. You don't know. In a few hundred years, the world might have disappeared, nuclear Armageddon, and we'll all be dead. It's irrelevant. All you have is your life. All you can do is focus on making it the best. Stop worrying about what happens. There's no point in even considering it. Michael, will Millei be able to abolish the Central Bank of Argentina, or will other world powers not let him? Could Millei turn Argentina into a first world economy? I don't know. It's going to be hard to abolish the Central Bank of Argentina, but other countries in Latin America have done it. Ecuador has basically no central bank. The economy's a dollar economy. Panama's economy is a dollar economy. El Salvador has no central bank. They have a dollar economy. So it's certainly possible. And the question is, does he want it? Are his allies on board with it? Because a lot of his allies are kind of nationalistic conservatives who want an Argentinian currency. It's part of their nationalism to have their own currency and not use those dollars from another country. I don't think the world powers will get in the way. Maybe the IMF, but I don't think if they dollarize, I don't think the IMF would get in the way. They didn't in other cases. Could Millei turn Argentina into a first world economy? Certainly he could, if he's allowed to do it. If the Argentinian people back him up, if they elect the right people to parliament in the elections coming up in the fall, then yeah, he could definitely turn the economy into a first world. He certainly has the plan to do it, the ability to do it, and then the question is, does he have the political support to do it? Not your average algorithm. Narcissism and selfishness are going to be conflated in the next 50 years, at least. At least it's slowing the movement down. I think, yeah. I mean, look, narcissism, pragmatism, hedonism, even nihilism have often been conflated with selfishness. The altruists have every incentive to take every negative characteristic out there that appears somehow to be in somebody's self-interest and conflate it with selfishness. It's always been hard. It will continue to be hard. There's nothing new here. It's just I think narcissism has always been viewed as selfish. Kiki, ban BYU cars because a possible kill switch. Or maybe leave that to customers to decide. Maybe have inspectors inspect the cars and make sure there isn't a kill switch. BYD, you mean, not BYU. BYD. I don't know. I wouldn't ban cars. I would let consumers decide whether they want to buy the car or not. Maybe encourage them not to buy them. But I don't think the state should get involved and make decisions for you what you can or not. I don't think BYD cars are a national security threat. But maybe we need inspection and to make sure that they don't have a kill switch, and maybe that they're not listening into conversations that are happening inside the car. Not that I care what the Chinese know about my conversations when I drive a car, but yeah, the more power we give the government to decide which products are okay for us to use and which are not, the less freedom we have. Dan Norton, my first super chat just to test. Thanks for the shows. Yep, super chat is working. Matt says, I'm officially been a member for 1 year. Thank you for all you've taught me in the last 12 months. Any plans to come back to SoHo Forum soon? Haven't been invited, so talk to what's his name? Gene, about inviting me back. Gene Epstein. Mary Eileen says, oh, AOC is 35, so I guess she's old enough. All right. AOC is going to run for president. It'll be fun. Esoteric Dichotomy. Hey, Yaron, would you ever move to a private charter city if they become common? Does the U.S. need more new cities? We have a lot of land to use. Yeah, we absolutely. We need more immigrants. We need more people. We need more cities. We need more population, more production, more creation, more building, all of that stuff. Would I move to a charter city? Maybe under the right circumstances. I'm skeptical because I think that the government's granting them the charter will ultimately take it away. They'll ultimately step in and take the charter away. All right, guys, we only have, about 10 minutes. We're $60 short of our 1 hour goal, and we're going on 2 hours or an hour and a half. So, please consider supporting the show. Stickers of large denominated stickers would be great. Large denominated questions would be great, or just stickers of any denomination would be amazing as well. Hopper Campbell, let's be honest. We're collapsing into Nazi Germany, and there's nothing we can do to stop it. I don't think any of that is true. I don't think we're collapsing into Nazi Germany. We're not rounding people up. And Trump is not Hitler. He's not ideological enough. And if he was ideological, the American people would have never voted for him. We are not in Nazi Germany. We're not heading to Nazi Germany. Relax, calm down. Stuff is bad enough without blowing it out of proportion. Adam, it's all a variation of the same argument. Less tariffs, more supply of goods, more choice, lower prices, more houses, more choice, lower prices. And note that, tariffs are just taxes. So lower taxes, more supply of goods, more choices, more freedom, more pursuit of happiness, more respect for the individual's life, and lower prices, of course. So yes, absolutely. No, but it's all the same theme. You're absolutely right. All right, last two questions. If you want to ask something, jump in quickly here. Hi, Ron. Just finished the Leonardo series and really enjoyed it. Thanks for the recommendation to me. Do you know other series in that style? No, I mean, there's a lot of series on artists, but I don't know anything in that style, no. You know, there's something on Raphael, there's something on Michelangelo, all enjoyable, but I'm not sure if that style is, I'm not sure if it's the same thing. Mary Aline, this is the last question. How does Trump believe in tariffs with such passionate intensity when he doesn't understand how they work? Is it batshit crazy? He understands that they reduce, well, I don't know what he understands. I don't know. He's batshit crazy. There's no question about that, although I'm not supposed to say that. He's not very smart. He's not very smart, and he can't really hold what they actually do. But what he really hates is trade deficits, and he believes wrongly, and his first term shows that if you have tariffs, you get rid of the deficit. And that's really all he cares about, is getting rid of the deficit. But you don't do that. First of all, there's nothing wrong with the deficit. Zero, zilch, nada. Second, tariffs don't get rid of trade deficits. You didn't update on Doge. Why aren't you using superchat like everybody else was? No updates on Doge because there's nothing to update. Nothing special is happening. As I said, Doge wants access to Social Security, but for what? Just to root out fraud and that, which is meaningless and doesn't. It's just there's just nothing interesting going on with Doge right now. They're not cutting anywhere near as much money as they said they would. Certainly not 2 trillion or 1 trillion. Now they're down to 150, and of the 150, we're probably looking at 50, maybe 50. So it's less interesting, and nothing much is happening. Oh yeah, news flash on Monday, probably at around 10:30. I will be joining Destiny's podcast, YouTube channel. What does he do? Does he even do YouTube? I think he's going to send me a Zoom link. So I'm going to be on Destiny's show for a couple of hours. So I don't know what the format looks like. I don't know how he does it. I don't know if it's a debate. I don't know what it is. But basically, I'll be on a stream. I'll be on Destiny's stream starting 10:30 in the morning on Monday. So Destiny is this big, huge celebrity. Would you call him a leftist, a centrist, or something like that? So we will see where the conversation takes us. We will see what we're talking about. But it sounds like we're just going to be chatting. And it's great because he has a massive audience, which is mostly a new audience for me. So, yeah. I don't hate him. I've seen a little bit of him. I mean, he's wrong on a lot of stuff, but I certainly don't hate him. Okay, Simon snuck in a question. How do you articulate to someone that values objective, even in the realm of economics, and values can't be subjective because they are tied to reality? Well, I mean, it doesn't matter what realm they are. They're objective to the extent that they enhance your life, that you are value. Now, some values are, they can be subjective. The point is that there are such things as objective values. And the standard of objectivity is reality and their contribution to your life. So to the extent that the value adds to your life, is enhancing your life, leads to your flourishing, supports your well-being, and it really does so, that's based on reality, then it's an objective value. Objective is not independent of valuer. Quite the opposite. Objective is by the standard of the valuer. You have to have a standard. Only the valuer can give them standards. So the valuer is what makes it objective. There is no such thing as objective in epistemology outside of for somebody. There has to be a consciousness that is being objective. There's no such thing as a disinterested something out there. Values are not intrinsic. They're not in and of themselves good. They're good for whom and for what. And that is what makes them objective. All right, guys, I will see you all tomorrow. Not sure exactly what time, but we will have a show tomorrow. Thank you to all the super chatters. I really, really appreciate it. And I guess I will talk to you soon. Bye, everybody.